Okay, this is the video about the vertebrae. So this is one of your out-the-door quizzes. These right here, 1, 2, and 3, represent 3 of the 7 cervical vertebrae that you have in your neck. This guy right here represents 1 of the 12 thoracic vertebrae that you have in your thoracic region. 1 for each rib. This guy right here represents your 5 lumbar vertebrae, which are at the base of your spine, and these 2 represent your sacrum and your coccyx. And for our intents and purposes, you just need to be able to recognize that this is the sacrum and that this lower pointy piece is the coccyx. So I'm going to take it out of the way, and we are going to focus from the head down. Okay, so these 3 guys right here are 3 of the 7 cervical vertebrae. They each have their own distinct features. There's 2 special ones, and then there are the remaining 5 who have very similar characteristics. This very first one is called the atlas because your head sits on this part. The second one is called the axis because it has this little tooth guy right here that the atlas sits on here, and then the head sits on top of this. And then this third one is very representative of the other remaining 5. If you all notice, they all have similar features. They have transverse process on each side, this little bony point sticking out. On this one, they're kind of hidden underneath that facet. Okay, they have transverse foramen, so all 7 of them have these transverse foramen. Okay, and then the interesting thing about the atlas is it doesn't really have a vertebral body. It has an anterior arch and a posterior arch. And then it has, just like everybody else, a superior articulating facet on each side. Okay, and then just like everybody else, it just like the axis, it has a superior articulating facet, just like this guy has a superior articulating facet. Okay, so this is a pretty common feature, the facet between all of the vertebrae that we have. And then everybody has a vertebral foramen. Okay, and then if we flip them upside down, they all have an inferior articulating facet where they connect to the next vertebrae. So what's special about the axis is that it has this little tooth guy called the dens or the odontin process. This is the vertebral body right here. And then the other thing that's special about the axis is that it has a bifid spinous process, because in a real one you would see an actual little split right here. So it actually breaks into 2 little pieces like a fishtail. And then it also has the lamina, which is what attaches this portion to the transverse process on both sides. When we look at a regular cervical vertebrae, it too has a lamina where it attaches just underneath. It's kind of just a region that attaches underneath the facet, and then it has a regular spinous process. The next one, moving down, this guy represents one of our 12 thoracic vertebrae. Okay, you can see it also has some similarities to the cervical. So it has a vertebral body. It has a vertebral foramen. When we look at it from the front, or actually this is really the posterior surface, it has 2 superior articulating facets, a spinous process, 2 transverse processes, and then it also has a pedicle that attaches the face to the transverse processes. Then when we turn it to the side, we see that lamina now is a little bit more easy to recognize how the face attaches to the body. Okay, and then when we flip it over, so the lamina here, when we flip it over, this is kind of the tough part to see because his inferior articulating facet is here and here. So that's our thoracic vertebrae. And then, oh, and there's also a little facet here that where it articulates with the ribs, so that's kind of another kind of feature of these guys. And then we have the last big guy, the lumbar vertebrae. Again, notice the vertebral body gets bigger, so that's still here. We still have a vertebral foramen. We have the lamina that attaches this whole face to the body, so a lamina here and a lamina here. From the top, it's really easy to see those transverse processes, and then the superior articulating facets. On the back side of this is the superior articulating process. Same thing right here. This is a process now on the back, okay? And then we have the spinous process, and then we have the pedicle that attaches this to the face to the ears, so to speak. And then we have an inferior articulating facet back here and an interior articulating facet right here. So although it's a lot of terms, most of these, if we compared them, have all these similar features. They all have superior and inferior articulating facets. They all have transverse processes that just are in different shapes. All of them have a spinous process except for the atlas. So once you get the hang of the terms and the fact that they can flip over and you can see them from their inferior surface, and see those inferior articulating facets, kind of hard to see sometimes, you'll get the hang of this. So study these, play the purpose games, and you'll be ready to go.